we're really glad to see you on this very, very interesting topic, a dream topic for me, to be honest. The mystical nature, the principles with an Indigenous perspective. Those two of my favorite topics, mystical, spiritual, and that. What do we mean by mystical? Well, hopefully we'll be able to transfer it in to you. But words that came to me with the word mystical: oneness, so it's our oneness, visual, silence. Listen to the silence of the people sharing. And perhaps magical to add to that. Now, the most mystical person I have ever met is Sydney Banks. And he loved talking about the Indigenous people to me. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, he has a CD called The Great Spirit. And if you like this particular topic, please listen to that. You'll listen to the master talking to it. And this is so interesting, Dicken. It was exactly the same as when he was talking to the physicists. He phoned me up before he did the talk, and he wanted to know something about the Indigenous way of thinking, spiritually, of course. And I said a little something, and then he talked. And he was an expert. He was an expert on Native spirituality, but he didn't know any of the details that involved in it. And the other thing that he said, don't use mind, thought, and consciousness. Use spirit, thought, and consciousness when you're talking to the Indigenous people. So you'll hear a lot of words about spirit, and that's a reality that I'm very comfortable in, because when we first listened to Sid, that's what he mostly talked about. So that's a really neat thing. Now, the show is going to be about an hour and a half or so. So it's a little longer than a lot of the webinars that you've done. We don't have any set time that we're going to finish. And please participate with questions, etc., at a certain time, or viewpoints, or anything that you feel is relevant. The more you participate, the more you share, the more you grow, the more the show grows. And of course, that's mystical, because it goes into the unknown. That's another aspect of the mystical, the unknown to the known. Now, this is part 4 of a series. And most people don't realize it, but it is. And it started with Ivalo, who lives in Greenland. And she had been touched by the diversity output that 3PGC went, where they acknowledged that they had a blind spot. There wasn't enough diversity. And she also had heard something that I had shared. And so something came out of her. And she phoned me up and says, let's do a show together. I want to talk about my experience. So part 1 was, so I came on the show. I didn't even know, to be honest, what the show was going to be like. I thought, it would be a usual song and dance thing that we do, but it wasn't. Ivalo had something to share, and she talked for close to half an hour, and something very unusual. I actually listened for a half an hour. That is very unusual. And she expressed the unknown to the known, the mystical experience that she had. Very visual. That's a tip. Very visual. That feeling, that's Indigenous. Very, very visual and very powerful. And you could hear the silence, and you could hear the pure consciousness that she was experiencing in her own unique way. And that one of the unique features of that was that at the end of that show, Inuit Alaska approached her and says, oh, let's have a talk. And they did 2 talks. And that's mystical. Do you see how it spread? Just by a little talk. And they were interested to talk to Ivalo and Annie. I have no idea what they talked about or how it went, but I love the connection. spreading out very innocently. So that was part, and then within a very short time, Patti Jo contacted me. And Patti Jo is from Kansas, from the Kickapoo tribe. And I had taught her 7 years ago. And she was, I guess, sort of like my student. And in 7 years, she had really not grown. We started to talk, and it was like colleague to colleague. It wasn't any more student and teacher's relationship. She had grown so much, I hadn't been aware of it. And that touched me so much that I wanted to get together with Ivalo. And so Patti Jo came, Ivalo was there, Annie came as well, a new addition to the little group. And Patti Jo introduced herself, and the show was mostly about spiritual identity and from an Indigenous perspective, shared by Patti Jo and the rest of us getting involved. And then at the end, Annie talked. Didn't talk at all before, but this beautiful feeling came out. Beautiful feeling came out. It's just so gorgeous. So and I've had a strong feeling there's more here. It's still, we're scratching the surface. There's more. And then part 3 was Ivalo talked with Dicken. And now it was different. The first time she talked with a 3P, whatever we're called, type of thing, it was a release, but now she was comfortable in what she was sharing. And now they were sharing, again, it's kind of like Patti and Jo and I were, it was just sharing of a beautiful space. And also the introduction to the 3PGC community, because that was it was about. And Dicken was beautiful in the sense, when I ask people about Dicken, because I don't really know what his work is exactly like, I always ask the same question. And I say, is he spiritual? And they always say, yeah, he goes from the mystical to the psychological, to the mystical, psychological, effortlessly. And I felt, well, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's why he's here, because he can go into both worlds and explain things from both perspectives, because he knows it's a feeling. And so that brought us to, all of a sudden, I'm in the Secret Garden, which is a place where I live, beautiful garden. I'm reading Black Elk Speaks, and he's talking about his vision. And as he's explaining 30 pages of his vision, I get a vision. I said, it'd be nice to have all these people together and to share with it. So I'd like to introduce first myself. My name is Wahwasuck N poet, standing elk, standing prayers that go directly to God or the creator. Elk is a person who carries, he was not a shaman. It was a power of helping people with their passions and desires. Sounds a lot like 3P. And also I carry a second spirit name, Tatonka Naji. The first is Cree, the second is Lakota. And it's in honor of the pipe that I carry, the Tonka pipe, and the woman's medicine that I carry. And before we came on this show yesterday, I did a little pipe ceremony in honor of this show. And what I said is, let us all have a beautiful feeling together. So with that small introduction, as usual, we're going to turn it over to Ivalo, and away we go.
Thank you, Harry. My name is Ivalo Arnfjord. I am from Greenland. I live in Nuuk, in the capital of Greenland, with my family. I have a husband and we have 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. One day, more than 2 years ago, I listened to an audiobook, which I didn't really know what was about. but I knew that it was something that Arnajaraq N had talked about before, and my sister had talked about it before. But I listened to the audiobook, which Mette Louise Holland from Denmark had written. And then while I was listening to it on the airplane, my life changed completely. I had my first insight that was so powerful that it turned everything upside down. Everything was not what I have thought. I saw that I had misunderstood how the mind works. So I remember that nobody could understand what I saw, but I said to the woman next to me, I have misunderstood everything. I have misunderstood life. And I knew she couldn't understand it, but I wanted to yell it out because I saw something really, really truth. And it was unexplainable, but what I saw was so fantastic. But not only that, other insights came the day after, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth day. The insights kept coming to me. It happened normally when I relaxed, when I was laying down and listening. But it's unexplainable because it's something that I saw deep inside of me that has something to do with the truth. But I couldn't put words of what I saw and what I experienced. So I wrote to Mette Louise Holland and said my gratitude, said to her that I wrote to her what I have seen. And I was so grateful that I heard something and I saw something. And then later on, I understood that they were called the three principles, and there were names to that. But the words doesn't do justice. But about this spiritual part, about this indigenous part, it's something that I love to talk about, because it's deeper than the words, deeper than the methods and techniques I have worked with during the 15, 20 years in my life. It's deeper than those things. And I saw so much potential, so much possibilities for other people here in Greenland. And I wanted to make a small organization or something similar where we can get together and talk about this kind of how do I say, how to approach life, or this how you see life. And then and later on we found out we could make a non-profit organization, and we are not that many. But Arnajaraq is with us, and my sister and Arnajaraq's sister, and we have few members. But when we started with sharing our stories and our insights, back in 2018 in March, we were very few members in a Facebook group, and now we are almost 3,000 members. And it's 2.5 years ago. And during those years, we have met new people, heard new people talking about how they also have been affected or stumbled across this understanding, and how they have helped their lives. So and it's wonderful to see the beautiful changes that we see and that we read, but it's not everybody that we get get in contact with, but that Facebook group is existing, and it's there that we can get to share whatever we have seen through insights. I don't know if Arnajaraq has something to say about this group or another Facebook site we have, but it's mostly through those groups and sites that we share. But otherwise, we have other small things or ways we also share. It's been expanding so quickly, so I cannot keep up what's going on. But the interest is there, and people are listening.
And the word that Ivalo keeps saying to me is how easy it is for them to understand and hear the message that Sid was expressing about the truth inside, and of course the relationship to thought. So, and also I want to mention that Greenland is a Danish colony, or not a colony, but under the Danish jurisdiction, and it has a different flavor, a different culture than Patti Jo's has, or Ron Kingberg. I saw him, he was on here as well. That feeling, it's different expression on the outside, but inside it's the same Indigenous feeling, because we're all Indigenous to the three principles. We're all Indigenous to truth. Annie, do you have something you'd like to share?
Yes. I come from Greenland too. I came across 2017.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Annie. Maybe we'll go to someone else, Annie, and then come back to you if you can fix that a little.
Fine.
Yeah, okay.
You said they're having a big storm there, Harry.
Oh, okay. So we have either Patti Jo or Dicken, whichever one would like to chit chat. Tell story is the way it really says. Everything in the Indigenous world, you can't just say, I know this, I am this. It always has a story, and it's a story that carries the feeling of it, not the I am this. In our world, the non-Indigenous world, I am this, I have a PhD, so I'm an expert. None of that is true in the Indigenous world. It's you have to tell a story, and the story has to have a beautiful message to it. Maybe Patti Jo, can you talk a little bit? And
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I'm here to help, and I'm here because once again, I'm your friend, and I appreciate that relationship. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
Yay. Okay. Just checking in. Well, thank you very much for the invite. My name is Patti Jo Wahwasuck. I go online, Pamasmo Kwa. That's my Indian name. I think I explained what that was a little bit in my previous meeting with you. I'll share again because I know that we have some newcomers here today. Maybe it'll help a little bit kind of understand, where I'm coming from. But, my people, Native American Indian, we're originally Algonquin, woodland type Indians from the Great Lakes area. We got removed, in the 1800s, of course, and had to move to Indian reservations. And one of the settlements was in Kansas, Northeast Kansas. And that's where I live. That's where I make my home. My people, Kickapoo tribe in Kansas, even though I'm Kickapoo, it is still a little bit of a diversity within that tribe, because we have Kickapoos in Texas who settled there. We have Kickapoos who settled in Oklahoma. And the Texans and the Oklahoma Kickapoos, they still have preserved their language. My settlement here in Northeast Kansas, we're just mainly English, and our language is one thing that we lost, probably because of the boarding school era, is my guess, is my theory, because it was so close. Haskell, Indian, junior college. Back then it was Haskell boarding school. Today it's Haskell Indian Nations University today. It's located in Lawrence, Kansas. It's only about a little over an hour drive from here. And that was the reason for that institution, was to, I guess, psychological genocide and to assimilate Native American Indians into the American Gen Pop culture. And that institutional trauma teachings affected my people. So we have a few people that still preserve the language, but we're English for the most part, English speaking. And but back to my Indian name, we still carry on our I guess the English word for it would be spirituality ways. And I kind of sigh, because I will agree with what Ivalo had to say about it. Words just don't do it justice. Because that way of life, that way of living in that spirit, that presence, that state of mind, that state of being, it's just so natural for me, probably because I was raised with it. You know, it was just part of my culture. We go so far that we give names for that spirit, and that's my name, Pamasmokwa. That it has a form, you know, when I was an infant, and all that life that goes along with it. Not just people, but the spirit of all life, all living things. It's part of that, and it carries me in prayer through the rest of my life. And you know, I have a clan, I have a color, a clan. I'm a wind clan. It's kind of similar what Harry was describing in his introduction as an elk. Maybe that's kind of part of his name, but I'm a wind, which is part of a thunder clan. My last name, Wahwasuck, is part of a thunder clan. That was my dad's name, and it means night lightning in a distance. So I'm trying my best to tell you a story to introduce myself of who I am. That's part of our culture, and so that you can understand who I am and all that goes in with my name, Pamasmokwa. Anyway, I just wanted to share that much with you, but that's part of my understanding with this 3 principles. I shared this in my previous talk, so I won't get deep into it, but I learned about this English in the books when I went to college here nearby in Topeka. Diane McMillan, got to give her recognition is what I'm looking for, because it was, I was just really in disbelief, because this way of living, you know, I just got through telling you my Indian name, it's my spirit, that's my spirit name, and it's part of all these living things. And in Gen Pop world in the United States, I would be pegged as cuckoo. and my dad warned me about that too. You know, you can't be talking about things like that because for that reason, you know. But and I'm glad that I introduced a little bit about the institutional trauma attempts, because that's part of my people today too. Because you know, we learned how to hide, be quiet, you know, kind of like how baby deer are. You know, you want to stay out of sight, out of mind, and keep what you've got, that preserve. And anyway, so this way of life, this way of living, how my parents would talk with me, interact with me, tell me things, tell me stories, my upbringing, that was what I learned to hide and preserve. So at one time, I thought all that way of living, way of life, that way of functioning, that state, or I think Ivalo described it as a pod when she discovered her own insight. And it kind of, you know, she talked about how it gave her a feeling of, you know, a pure, I guess, joy and at peace, at ease. All that vehicle of navigating through life in an everyday way. You know, I was taught all that in my upbringing, but never talked about it in English until I went to college. And it was my professor at that time, Diane McMillan, who taught the 2 years of prevention. And this is what we learned, the 3 principles for prevention. I did that for 2 years. And the class really set well with me, because I was in total disbelief that this was all in English. And it was outside of my upbringing with what I learned from my family, from my dad, that I was supposed to hide and keep quiet and preserve, you know, this vehicle way of life. So anyway, that was my disbelief that this is available, and it's not something that, you know, I'm kind of cuckoo because I do believe in these connections, and all these connections, you know, they're already there, and it's not something I'm doing. It's just something that, you know, all I have to do is kind of plug in and be that way on a daily, you know, at each moment is how it's described in English. So I try to be that way as much as I possibly can, because, you know, for me personally, you know, that's who I am. That's, you heard me describe, that's the stories that I was given from my own dad, you know, and he learned them ways, not from this book. He didn't know anything about these things. He was a World War II veteran, you know, he was in that era. So the book wasn't even in existence then. He learned them from his people through telling stories and hearing things and interactions with family, and, you know, through example and all that. So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts about what we're talking about today, and spirituality, and kind of how I am able to present my personal experience. And this is what I understand, that this is all very personal. And what Harry was describing, it is innate, the English word that I learned back then. It's innate, not only Indigenous, but, you know, I understand that we're all probably Indigenous at one time. You know, in English language, they call our brain, we got a primitive brain. We all do back here, you know, and the ability to have instincts and insights, and that natural good feeling, and being able to just plug into that purity, that good feeling, that good vehicle. That's all I got right now, Harry. But thank you again for
Well, you'll have more.
inviting me.
You'll have more to share.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, one of the words that Patti Jo used was a word that Sid really loved. He said, the indigenous people understand instinctual. He says, use that word. And when I asked a very wise elder, very, very wise elder in my territory, I says, why do the indigenous people so easily walk into silence? It's because it's very noticeable that when they step into the spiritual reality or the mystical reality of life, silence is amazing. And he said something that made so much sense to me. He says it's instinctual to the people. So whether in Ivalo and Annie's culture, they don't have as strong a cultural link as Patti Jo has. But the silence and the understanding of spirit is instinctual to the people. And that's what I picked up. I was surprised that they didn't want to talk about their culture and so on. But I wasn't surprised that they had an indigenous feeling that I could relate to, because it's the indigenous feeling that's within every human being. And that's really the message of this show. Every human being has this indigenous feeling. Sid called it a spiritual identity. And that's where the goodies are, just to use him. And with the goodies, maybe Dicken, you could roll into what you'd love to share. You have to unmute yourself, Dicken. On the far left.
I hope that Annie got her connection sorted out. I'd love to hear what Annie has to say. So.
I don't even see her.
Yes, I think it's better now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it is better. Yeah.
You want me to start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. My name is Arnajaraq. I'm from Greenland, as Ivalo, from Nuuk. I first heard about the 3 principles from my father. He was reading a book from Middle Holland, and instantly when he began to talk about the 3 principles, I felt empty. I was home. Up to that point, I was always anxious. I was always anxious. I thought it was normal, but I didn't understood what my father was talking about, but I was home. So I bought the book, and instantly I felt calm. I began to see the faces of the people around me. I began to listen to them and really could see their faces. It was like entering a magical world, but it was all the same. It had always been there. It was beautiful. So I came home. Yes, as Ivalo, I have had several insight, like we are the universe inside of us. I just changed. I just stopped talking and listened to people around me. Some could see the change in me. But it was so beautiful, and it is still beautiful. Some days I feel off, like I have too much thinking, but I just know that it will come off again and I'll be here. the beauty is always here. So thank you.
It's a real honor to be here with you today. Thank you. Last night, sitting quietly, thinking about getting together, the phrase came to me, bathed in spirit. I've never had that thought before, bathed in spirit. When I was young, I was very anxious as a young boy, very anxious. So Annie, I can appreciate what that's like to live in that world. I was very anxious, except I loved to escape into nature and played in the woods by myself and with friends. But I liked it best when I was by myself and could climb to the top of the tallest tree or find a place underneath bushes where I could look out and not be seen, or be by the side of a lake and gaze into the water. And the insecure person disappeared. And I felt bathed in spirit. And I became the tree, the lake, the leaf falling, and felt free. But every time I started thinking about myself and my life, and I did a lot of that kind of thinking when I was with other people, I felt a different kind of alone and separate, very insecure again. Later, I discovered meditation, and I started studying the mystics and cultures all over the world. And they talked about this space within. So in meditation, sometimes after many hours of meditation, I'd go, as Ivalo was saying, I'd go beyond all the words, all the thinking, all the ideas, all the beliefs, all the concepts, and be bathed in spirit again. I thought it took a lot of work to get there. So I worked, did tons of techniques, studied other people's ideas for what to do and how to do it. I became a psychologist because I was very interested in well-being. I studied that. I did not like the idea that people had illnesses, psychological illness. That never made sense to me. So I found people that saw the health in people, and that began to point in this direction. And then after being a psychologist for 10 years, I came across a man named Sydney Banks, 9th grade education from Scotland. And he spoke a language that my soul understood. He said, you always have within you what you've been looking for. We live in a spiritual world. Our thinking creates separation and difference, but we're a thought away from dropping out of our thinking. It doesn't take time, doesn't take effort. It's available to everybody. It's one little step beyond our precious thought system. He said one time, we're one little step beyond our babbling thought system that's just talking away. And because he had this experience where he felt one with all of life, one with God, he spoke with great conviction that any one of us could get a little taste of that, that we could step beyond our thought systems into this ordinary present space that's always here because we're always part of this ocean of spirit. We're waves on the ocean. I thought I was a separate little insecure wave. And Sid Bank says, look down. We're all connected. We're all one. And again, I tasted that freedom I tasted as a young child. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. I started seeing my kids. At that time, my daughter was about 13 years old. My son was 8. I started seeing not just the health in them, but seeing them as spiritual beings, and that we're all waves dancing on the ocean of spirit, and that we can drop into this space within and be bathed in spirit. And it awakens our hearts because we realize the truth of life, that we're all one, we're all connected. And it's the only thing, it's the only thing I'm interested in, and only thing I'm interested in talking about with people and doing the best I can to try and point them toward our true nature, which is spiritual. I had the COVID virus, and I was as sick as I've ever been in my whole life for 2.5 weeks. And I woke up on day 18 and every symptom was gone. But you know what else was gone? All of my little mind thinking. And I had 4 days where I felt like I was a newborn. And all I wanted to do was walk outside and be outside. And the wind on my cheek would bring tears because it was so beautiful. And the light on the ocean in front of where we live brought tears, and the birds singing was the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life. And I had a gift from the Creator. I felt like this was a gift to have 4 days. On day 5, I heard this voice and it scared me. I was like, what is that? And I realized it was just my usual self-talk. But my relationship to it has changed. It was like I wasn't interested. It was like, talk to my hand. So it just helped make even more real the world of our ideas is an illusion. When that falls away, because it's just an illusion, it's like a dream. When it falls away, then we experience the real world. The spiritual world is the real world. And then, as Sid Banks would say, we get really good at going back and forth between these two worlds. And the world of thoughts and ideas and communication is a playground now, not to be taken too seriously, and we can have fun playing around with ideas and thoughts. But as soon as there's any kind of tension, stress, it's saying enough of these ideas, enough. Drop in, drop out of the world of separation and difference into this space within where we can be bathed in spirit and be made new again and be uplifted in spirit and be renewed, made new again, renewed in spirit. I just want everybody in the world to know to know our true nature. So I love hearing people. I've really enjoyed listening to the other folks here talking about their inclination, their knowing, their experiences, their stories. So thank you.
Great, Dicken. When you were talking, what came to me was in my life of where I had this incredible silence and oneness experience on Salt Spring Island, I then had a tremendous amount of personal problems that I was going through, happily, sort of, sometimes discouragingly. But when I was on a show recently, I was explaining something and something came to me. On the outside, I was going through all these ups and downs through lack of wisdom. See, that was the word Sid used for mystical wisdom. That's what he was talking about. And through this lack of wisdom, it looked like my life was all choppy and so on, had so much bad stuff in it. On the inside, from that initial mystical experience, it was growing effortlessly, beautifully. And the reason at a certain point it reached a tipping point was because life is spiritual, what Dicken was talking about, bathed in spirit. That's the reality of who we are. If we want to have answers psychologically, that's beautiful. But Sid talked about the spiritual world. And I don't want to keep using Sid as the thing. I, like Dicken, have come to the one absolute conclusion. What is happening on the inside is the truth. And what is happening on the outside is a thought-created reality. The only reason it was up and down so much was that my lack of wisdom, not going to the wisdom, not accessing the wisdom that is natural. And then we talk about effortlessness. It turns out it's a lot easier being happy than being confused and doubtful and shameful, etc. So I want to share one last message. When I was talking to the spirit, now this is indigenous stuff, but I hope I'm not going to get too much into that. And I said, why am I not helping more indigenous people? And the spirit answered to me, as clear as, of course, it's inside out, of course, on one level. It said to me, you do your best and we'll take care of the rest. And that is actually the way it works. All we have to do is do our best as an ordinary human being, because that's all of us are. And the spirit will take care of the rest. But Sid said another thing to me once. I said to him, boy, spirit moves slow, doesn't it? And he said to me with a big smile on his face, "Yeah, Harry, real slow." That's how it works. Ivalo, could you share a little bit about your experience? Just not the full, but just a touch, just to give the people a touch of the feeling.
While I was listening to you, I came back to the time when we started to talk with each other, Harry. You sent me a link with Sydney Banks, the great, the great spirit, and I was listening to it at work, and I wanted to transcribe it all of a sudden. And while I was transcribing his text, because I wanted to make it as readable, or maybe translate it into Danish later or Greenlandic later. But while I was in that, it came back to me that that I am one with everything. I am one. It's like one of my first insight, where I was in a silence. I haven't experienced any silence that was so tremendous. While I was in that space where everything was dark, it's like being up in the sky in the night, and there was nothing. It was all dark, and it was so silent. The silence was so tremendous that it was super loud, because suddenly everything was still. Everything was so silent, and it kind of like it was very sudden change. And then in this silence, it's like being in a vacuum. And then I saw this light from a distance, where I couldn't see if it was sun, if it was a source, I couldn't figure it out what it was. It's a round circle. It was light, but it was also transparent, and but I saw that I was away from it, but also a part of it, and I couldn't understand what was going on, but I had this sensation of that I was part of it. And then whatever I thought, is it a source? And then it turned out as a source. Is it a sun? And then it turned out as a sun. And it's like, oh, I'm playing with it. It's me who get to decide what it can be. It was this tremendous creativity among us, between us, as us. And I have told Dicken about this before, and I also saw that while I was away from it, in a distance from it, but I was also there. I saw that I was like in a bird. I was flying, like in the top of a bird, and I was flying. It was so beautiful, and then it hit me. I am home. It is my home. But it's not home in a sense of in this physical world or in this physical form, but it's inside of me, and then I get to be free. And I was so amazed. I was in a kind of shock, like, what? It's happening right now, but it's not happening here. And I thought, oh, that's what they mean when they say heaven on earth, having a home inside of me, not when I die or when I get to paradise. But it was like, what? It's inside of me. I get to experience that. It was like so mystical, but it's still unbelievable to my intellect, to my little mind, to really understand that. But I know that that I experienced this fantastic insight that was shown to me, that was revealed to me, that it's never outside, it's always inside. So what I saw, that this freedom of being, to be whoever I want to be, or I have this unconditional potential to be who I wanted to be. I can be. It's like finally I can get to be me, because I am home, even though it's like mystical part of me, but it's here anyway. So it's difficult to explain that, but I hope you can understand this. But it's not there, it's not out there, it's not in the future, or it's not anywhere. It's inside of everybody, that we have this home, that we have this creativity, that we have this freedom. I mean, this freedom was so amazing. It was so tasty. It was so delicious. But sometimes I forget that. But I know while I was listening to this, Sydney Banks were talking about in the Great Spirit, it was that sense I get to be in again. Oh, it was that what he meant. The Native Americans or Indigenous people, when they describe this spirituality, or with the connection of the nature, or being with everything, it's what they mean. I get to have experience it as a little bit, as a little taste of it, because I have never experienced it like that before. So it's one of also those insight I had, where I got to see my true identity, which was creativity, which was freedom, which was also unique for me, because everybody is unique and they get to experience it their own way. And then you have to experience it, experience it on your own, to understand what that is. But it was so amazing, and I loved when Sydney talked about it. It's so beautiful, to be a drop in an ocean, or an ocean in a drop, and I get to experience both of those explanations, where I am part of it, but I'm also part of everything. So it's unbelievable. And I am so grateful that I get to see that. And it's mystical that it happened to me. I didn't do anything at all. I didn't do anything. It just came to me. And I'm so grateful for that.
That's beautiful. Patti Jo, could you tell a little bit how the Kickapoo, or the way in the old ways, see, the old teachings have all the wisdom for the Indigenous people. You don't really need anything more. Could you tell a little bit how going home, the home that she was talking about, Ivalo, how you see that from what you were taught or experienced?
Sure, I could do my best to put it in words, just, to give you stories and memories that I have. I wanted to bring up, first of all, just to kind of put forth this, the way of functioning, or that vehicle of functioning in spirit, and applying that application to self and everyday life. And then in addition, that connection with others, because I think that it's too important to not overlook that connection. And I think that might be part of what you're maybe kind of talking about or leading toward, I guess, is that connection. First of all, before I get to that, I just want to kind of tie it into what was already said here. When Dickens was sharing his memories of childhood memories, that brought good feelings to me, and that's kind of part of the answer that you might have been kind of looking for, Harry, or what my thought is of how to answer your question. That experience of, growing up, my upbringing and all that, and how this was taught to me through examples. Dickens was describing climbing a tree, being in I think he called it forest, I call it timbers. Being in the forest or being part of nature, being by that water. I heard feeling that wind on your face when he got well, when he was on his way back journey to being well again from a very serious illness that we're all living in, navigating through, and trying our best to be a survivor of the Hunger Games of 2020, put an analogy on it. With all that being said, the way he was sharing his experience of being one with nature, that connection was there for me because he brought back good memories in my primitive long-term thinking brain of similar situations, just as recent as yesterday, taking my grandbabies out into nature and just having conversations with them, interactions really with my own grandbabies who are only 3 and 4. Grandma doesn't have much around here, but grandma really gives them quality time when they do come here. And I am involved in their world, their experience when they're here with grandma, that feeling. And I remember that feeling, and I guess that feeling was given to me from my own grandma when I was little. I was her world, and I know what that's like, that experience, that connection. She didn't tell me in words, she just did it through her actions and brought me in together with her through listening, through paying attention to my social cues as a child, no judgment, keeping it simple like that. And but really the listening, the active listening is what I'm thinking about, because that, putting that description in English, Harry, way back then when I first met you and we got to experience the sweat lodge together, I didn't quite have that. Not that I didn't know how to active listen to somebody else and pick up on their own social cues, to be fully involved and engulfed in their world, in their experience, and what they are talking about from their heart, to bring forth and take the time out of their life to share it with you. All that process, I didn't really realize the importance of that because of my own thinking back then, my own reservations of what maybe, if it had to do with self-worth, self-esteem, or just a thought that I had that me being with somebody who wants to be with me, you know, a Native American Indian from the reservation in Kansas that has taught to hide and preserve whatever it is that I was taught from my family. So I don't know if that was the thought that was keeping me from actively listening and being with another person, to have that connection. But that's what I am thinking about now as you ask me some of my upbringing. That was modeled to me by my family, and that feeling. I always remember that sense within me that I liked. It brought me joy, it brought me healing, it brought me happiness, that natural good feeling, you know, that feel good, you know, I want more of it, kind of like that, you know. And that's my indicator or my baseline of where I want to be. And that was taught to me as a child. And I didn't know how to describe it, that baseline feeling for myself. I didn't know how to describe it until, you know, I went to college and I found out that somebody put all this in English. And quite simply, really, but we make it difficult through our own thinking or lack of confidence or whatever it is, of that judgment on me, that I'm not good enough to share something. I don't have enough self-worth, self-esteem to share something because I've been institutionally navigated to learn to teach me how to hide and preserve something. And I hope you don't hear the knocking. Sorry about that, but I hear the floors are starting it again. But so it's a thought that prevents me from being 100% plugged into that good, happy feeling, or it's a thought on other people that they're not worthy, they're not good enough to pay attention to, or I'm having judgment on them. That's preventing me from that connection of oneness. And I think that's just kind of one example of how to combine the both of that natural good feeling of, first of all, how do I get to that elevated state, the elevated good feeling, that pure thought feeling without any judgment from myself or of other people. That is one piece of it. And the other piece is, you know, keeping that elevated feeling when I'm with another person for that connection, whether it be one of my little grandbabies, and humbling myself so much, taking myself, all my thoughts and all my judgments out of it, all those thoughts that keep me from that natural pure feeling, that natural pure state of functioning, or that vehicle that I most definitely want to share with my family, my little grandbabies. You know, I want to share that because that's probably one of the greatest gifts that I can give them. And maybe that's why my grandma shared it with me, that effective listening or just being. I heard Sydney Banks say, just being with another human being and giving them that time. So that's one example I have, I guess, that maybe it could be universal, is just that practice of interaction and how to connect with other people to continue to surface, this heaven on earth kind of feeling that Ivalo shared. Because it isn't just a one-time bing that it happened way back when, you know, it's a baseline feeling that can be always like that.
Beautiful.
I don't know if that kind of helps answer any of your question, Harry, but that's kind of what I was thinking about as we've been talking.
Beautiful. One of the greatest experiences I had with Patti Jo was 7 years ago. We spent a week together, and I've sent cedar and we've shared things, but she epitomizes how someone hears something with a powerful spirit that she already had, and then she did the same thing that I did. Nothing. Mystical means do nothing and you will change. And I could not believe when I was talking to Patti Jo after 7 years that we were talking together in learning from each other, in appreciating each other and loving each other. And it was so effortless. But I want to emphasize, mystical means 95% of what you will change is you doing nothing. It just happens. The rest of it is just getting in the way. And Fool's Crow had the most beautiful image. To me, this is the most powerful image of what Sid was talking about. Sid loved this image, absolutely loved this image. Fool's Crow said, when you're healing, it's like hollow bones going through you. The more hollow, the purer the healing. And that's who we are. As Dicken was talking about, we live in a spiritual reality. More hollow, more healing. When you do the pipe, more hollow, more healing. When you talk 3P, more hollow, more healing. And Patti Jo epitomized that. She just grew and grew and grew. So thank you, Patti Jo. That was such a treat, and still is. So glad you're here with us on this little journey here. Annie, could you say a few words, and then maybe we'll open it up, and anybody else who wants to share, of course. And then we'll open it up for a question or two.
I can do that. Thank you so much for your talks. I also thought about my grandmother when Dicken was talking. I just remembered where I felt so calm when she was talking about Inuit stories, about Sila, the spirit where every living being or a stone has spirits, and we all are the same material. So I just remembered her. It was so lovely. Yeah. I'm just in a great feeling right now. So I don't have so much to say, but I love listening to your words.
Beautiful. Before we open it up, I'm going to read from Sid. The wise medicine man in the Native North American culture spoke of the world as one spirit, referring to the creator of all things as the Great Spirit. This was their way of explaining the oneness of life. And then he concluded it with, thought is a divine tool that is the link between you and your divine inheritance and is at the core of all psychological functioning. I love that because I don't understand it. but I love it. And that's mystical. Most of what I've learned, I don't understand. So, Dicken, would you like to say a word or two more that you've had? It would be nice to hear a little bit more, and then we'll open it up to questions.
I hear this when I hear people sharing today, is there's such a deep feeling that goes along with spirit. And Sid would tell us there's no word in any language to really describe that feeling, because you're not there when you're having it. In order to put a word on it, you'd have to come back into your thinking, personal thinking mind, ego. But it is such a nice feeling. It's just the feeling of being surrendered to this moment as it is. If I put words on it, when I go beyond the judgments and noise of my personal thinking, I experience deep peace. When I fall beyond my thinking, my senses sing and come alive, and I experience enjoyment of life, enjoyment of the moment, enjoyment of having a cup of tea, enjoyment of watching the birds at my bird feeder, enjoyment of the senses. And that in that deep inner quiet, there's always a feeling of being more closely, intimately connected with anything that is in this moment. A person, a tree, a bird, the lake. And that's love. So it's just a feeling. At one point, Sid says, you put all those feelings together: peace, joy, love, compassion, caring. Put them all together. That's what God is. That's the experience of the truth of unity, of oneness. And I thought that was beautiful. Just beautiful. So I'd say it's all thought. Good news is we can wake up out of thinking that burdens us. And he would say, listen for a feeling. That kind of deep listening Patti Jo is talking about. Listening without thought. Presence. A presence that goes beyond the personal to spiritual presence, where they're the same. So, just wanted to say something about the feeling.
Yeah, Sid kind of talked quite a bit about that.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah. So maybe, does anyone have a question or two? You know, that would be really nice to see where we go with that. There's lots to talk about here. Go ahead.
Hiya. I can only see myself at the moment now, so I say that's better. Oh yeah, hi. I got into kind of the principles in March. It was when we had the pandemic, because I started reading a book by Mara Olsen that talked about thought, and then I kind of discovered Sid, and I was kind of that kind of ticked along nicely, and then I started getting these kind of insights coming, and I woke up in bed, and it's probably for about 5 seconds I suddenly felt all this positive energy going into me. And then I kind of had the thought and it stopped. And then it just felt like I've been plugged into a plug socket, and I was getting, I can just see myself again. So I just felt like I was getting like thousands of volts going into me. And I suddenly started getting all these like insights flying into me. And it was also like this little poet woke up. So I started writing all these poems as well, kind of about the principles. And, but then what was happening, I kind of suddenly felt like my consciousness was leaving my body. And so like for probably about 2 weeks, it just kind of, I lost 2 weeks. And then I texted a friend, like kind of excited about I was getting all these insights, and he'd had a similar experience, and he was actually a 3 principles trained facilitator. And then he spent about 30, 40 minutes just talking to me, and it kind of brought me back. But I was also doing a course with Michael Neal, and I was on his Facebook, and I was kind of putting all his insights up, and he kind of recognized, and his secretary, Lynn, and she rang me as well and spoke to me for about 30, 40 minutes, and that kind of brought me back again. And then she suggested listen to Sid. And so I kind of stick Sid on just for like hours, sometimes all night, and it would kind of bring me back. And so the question I want you to ask, is that kind of what the Native Americans would describe as spirit walking? And is it actually literally your consciousness leaving your physical body? And if it is, can you kind of become permanently lost if somebody doesn't bring you back? So I guess that's my questions.
That looks like one for you, Patti Jo.
Yes, nice to meet you, Joe.
Oh yeah.
With your question, I would associate that with flying. I'm going to call it flying. Okay. Yeah. And the only reason why I know about that is because I got sick one time. It was about, I think 5 years ago. I got real sick and I almost left this world. Down.
Yeah.
And real similar to what Dickens was saying and describing his COVID experience. Earlier, he was very ill. And my experience of being very ill and how I understand it, I'm giving you some words of, again, what I've been told. And when I tell you something about what I've been told, I mean, I, spend time with elder people. I live in a village, I live in a tribe. So our culture is that we still interact, mingle, small knit community, and we're raising each other's kids. Not that they live with us, but we see them on a daily often, and we watch out for others in like a small rural community. Mm-hmm. And so with that being said, that's been my experience of upbringing. And one of my relatives' dad, who is no longer with us, he aged and gone on his journey. But he talked about flying. So this is a older description. I explained to you at the beginning of the talk that, Native American Indians, we go so far to naming our spirit. I'm Pamasmokwa. That's my Indian name. My English name is Patricia, Patti Jo. And so I have a spirit within, similar to what we're talking about here. I was already born with it. I got a name for that spirit when I was a baby, an infant. I had loved ones who gathered for that purpose because they're all about that importance of me having that name and everything that's tied in with the name, my clan, my color, my, being connected with all living things of that name and how that name's gonna protect and carry me throughout life. Well, when I got sick and I almost left this world physically, my inside of my body, it started to shut down, go on survival mode, I guess. And that's what the doctors was telling my family and how much of a chance I had to live, come back here or whatever. I was asleep, and like Dickens was saying, my mind was kind of going still. I mean, in my mind, my brain, I was not at a risk, I was good. I was just kind of going through a time, I guess. But I was dreaming that I was inside that hospital building, and I was I could see the tops of people's of their heads, my relatives. I was going to different rooms in that hospital, and I still remember it to this day. So maybe that's the best memory I have to describe this out of body experience that you're talking about. That's my experience. And I don't know if that's similar to what you're kind of experienced or something close to it. But yeah, I remember seeing folks, it was like a dream.
Yeah.
And the next day when I woke up, I just wanted water, 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 water. If I could just have water, I think everything's going to be all right. And that was 5 years ago. And here I am today. I'm very grateful.
But mine was different because I was still conscious and I was still kind of functioning consciously. But my family said it was like I disappeared for 2 weeks. And so like I was still here, like physically, but it was kind of like my consciousness had just gone somewhere else. And then it's just like kind of come back now to sort of planet Earth almost sort of thing. And so like, yeah, my family would actually comment. I mean, I guess it's what kind of, if you use the medical term, they would say dissociation or something.
I wouldn't try to define it. This is
Yeah.
really more something this is for you. This is a gift from Creator to give you more faith in the mystical side of life. And one more thing, what's his name?
Joe?
Okay. When you open up to the mystical side of life, like you're talking about that mystical experience, gifts come.
Yeah.
You have to, these are your gifts. I always talk about the mystical gifts that come to people. That's, you open up to that, it opens up portals in your mind, portals to new areas of what that is. I could hear everything from Sydney Banks, but I needed to go into the native world to understand certain things. It was just my path, my way. If you don't question it and just start to experience who you are, those mystical gifts will become very powerful and you'll use them. But yes, nobody will understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's just a given. And you just enjoy it and say thank you, because you notice one thing about all the speakers here, lots of gratitude. And that's the most important. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. Any other question?
Hello. Hi, I have a question.
Oh.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is that I've been experiencing great shifts in my journey of this spirituality. Lately, I've been listening to Sydney Banks, and it has made a great shift in my mind. And my question is for my mom. She has obsessive compulsive disorder. So for the last 2 days, I played Sydney Banks videos, and although she doesn't understand a word of English, she is feeling better. I don't know how and why. So my question is that I want to help her get rid of this OCD. So can you tell me how it can happen?
Dicken, maybe you could handle that one.
It's helped me to understand that there's only one psychological problem ever. People get caught up in a belief that they think is true. And I've seen no exception to that. I've worked with people that have gotten every label you could get psychiatrically. And the labels are just describing how people behave the different ways people behave when they're caught up in thought and thinking it's true, and then losing connection in experience with spirit. And so when people listen to Sid Banks, since he talked from such a place beyond thought, it helps remind people of their true nature. Joe, that's all that's happening to you. When people talk to you, they remind you of your true nature, and you drop out of whatever underlying belief you were caught in, and you go, oh, it's back. I'm back. My true self is back. I feel. So the problem is we get disconnected with the wisdom of spirit because we get so caught up in our intellect, in our ego, in our ideas, in our beliefs. So there's always hope, Karen, for your mother.
Exactly.
There's always hope. I've worked with people who've been labeled OCD. They get very caught up in the content of their thinking, like I do when I get caught up, like anybody does when they get caught up. One problem, we get caught up in our thinking. One cure, we wake back up to our true self. So of course your mom can realize the truth of that and see that more deeply for herself. And as you see it more deeply from yourself, just your presence alone will begin to have the same effect on her that when she listened to Sid Banks. Same thing. When we drop into spirit, we have an immediate impact on what's around us, and affects and influences the creative nature of life, as Ivalo was so beautifully talking about us. It's all one web of life, one ecosystem, one interconnected system. So as you get quieter and touch these deeper feelings, that's also going to be helpful for your mom in ways that none of us can really understand. It's a beautiful mystery.
Beautiful, beautiful. Another question?
Yeah, before somebody else asks a question, I want to ask, like, is my presence enough for her to change?
Can you hear me? Can I answer that?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
I was wanting to say something, yeah, so much earlier, Karen, and your concern. You're sharing that same feeling with your mom that I described with my grandbabies. See, my grandbabies, I want them to have this good feeling because I love them. I want to give them a gift. I want to give that heaven on earth, as if how Ivalo was describing earlier. And that's all. Yes, you just answered your own question just right there. And that example that my grandma gave, the feeling, that natural good feeling, that link, that sharing, that interconnectedness. And I'm sharing that with you because, you know, I get I'm very, very, very blessed to be able to help others. And that is the connection because of my own thinking, my own thoughts that kept me from functioning in that vehicle of pure natural good feeling or in that calmness. Because see, Karen, I can't give what I ain't got. I can't, if I ain't got it my own self, I can't give it to you. You know, if my thoughts are here, there, everywhere, and like a butterfly, inability to focus, landing on a clover, landing on a leaf, landing on a flower, then I'm going to go on a grass and all over. Well, see, those are my thoughts that are keeping me from that natural good feeling. And that's why earlier I was encouraging you and everybody else, find your baseline. Joe, find your baseline. Your baseline is going to be much different than mine because we're separate people. And but you know, never give up on searching what that baseline is like for you. How that natural good feeling, just to quiet your mind, living in that silence, living in that calm. That's the baseline. And then being able, once you're there and you got it, then that's when I'm able to be with my grandbabies and share something with them. That's when you're able to be with your mom and share something with her through that connection, through that link. Joe, that's when you're able to be in your baseline, that calmness, that good feeling. No matter what your family members tell you, you know, again, those are other butterfly inability to focus feelings, that your thoughts are going here, there, everywhere, that are keeping you away from that baseline. That even keel is how my dad used to describe it to me sometimes, of that natural good feeling, that calmness, knowing that you're functioning in pure health, your innate, indigenous, whatever word you want to try to describe it, that feeling of functioning in that pure state vehicle. I wanted to share that, but of course, you answered your own question, Karen.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm grateful to Harry and Dr. Dicken and everyone. I have listened to you guys, and my life has been a big change. And thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It has been a lot of fun. There's no doubt about it. It's been interesting. And once the feelings came out from it's obvious in everybody. That's what makes it so much fun. You listen to Dicken, he listens to me. We laugh, I laugh at Dicken, he laughs at me a lot. Just the way.
Oh, it has been a very wonderful time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it has. It looks like, unless there's another question, it looks like we're coming
Okay.
to the end of it. And I feel, Ivalo and Annie, it's your presentation. It's something beautiful that's happening in Greenland. So if you could sort of wrap it up in whatever comes to you, I feel that's the best way.
I think what it made it really how do I call it, easy. I think what it made it really easy was that we are doing it as a collective. We are doing that as a group, or many people are talking about it at the same time in their own ways. So that's how it's getting, we are sharing so much about our own insights in different cities and different ways. And it's fun to do it because it's nice to be with other people who knows what we are talking about, and the importance of how this understanding is helping or remembering who we really are, and how easy it is to forgive. And also it's also not really forgiving, but it is the traumas, the history of colonization, or anything that has to do with bad memories. They were deleted automatically through insights. So it's just sharing how this understanding is cleaning or showering or bathing. Those misunderstandings is helping me see clearly how my life and other people around me. So it's wonderful that there are no efforts to get there. It's only through listening and being open-minded and yeah, only that. So I am very grateful that Arnajaraq is here and all others from our group. And I'm really glad that we get to have this webinar with you guys. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. It's something important very important to my life, to keep talking about this because I know how wonderful it is to have a second chance. I don't know if Arnajaraq has something to say.
I also want to say thank you, all of you, for joining this. As Ivalo said, it is simple. Sometimes the mind wants to get in the way, the ego, but we always come back to it. It's easy, the easy way, and common sense, surrendering. It's like trusting, but I don't have to trust because I know it will, the nature will help me in any ways if I just surrender, let it go. So thank you all for this wonderful talk.
So I think we're come to the end, and there'll be a recording, of course, that Ivalo will put out. And to all the sharers here, I give my heartfelt feelings to you as well, and to the people who attended. Honestly, we're so glad to see you. We're so glad to see you. Thank you for coming. And in the language that I understand, Kupskam, which is called Salish, like Miigwech in Patti Jo's language. Kupskam. Thank you very much.